Warm greetings to the distinguished chairpersons, respected panel members, and esteemed participants. I am Dr. Soumya Kammar, working as a guest faculty at Srimati VHD Central Institute of Home Science College, Bangalore. It is a privilege to present part of my doctoral research work titled A Psychometric Tool to Measure the Generational Differences, Development and Standardization of Psychosocial Well-being Scale for Elderly. We all know that aging is a complex and heterogeneous process. Assessing the psychosocial well being of elderly is crucial in order to identify the early detection and prevention of mental health problems. Uh, However, in Indian context, a comprehensive and culturally sensitive tool to assess a psychosocial well being scale holistically remain limited. So, recognizing this gap, this study aimed to develop and standardize a psychosocial well-being scale specifically for elderly individuals, which is also a culturally sensitive tool to measure well-being across emotional, mental, physical, and social context. The objective of this study are first is to develop a comprehensive psychosocial well-being scale for elderly using psychometric procedures. Second is to demonstrate its application at community level for assessing well-being among elderly population. Coming to the methodology, the scale construction followed a systematic psychometric procedures based on the theoretical foundations and extensive literature review and expert consultation. 9 dimensions were identified, namely psychological resilience, cognitive functioning, emotional wellness, financial autonomy, cultural engagement, spiritual wellness, physical wellness, subjective well being, and interpersonal relationships. An initial pool of 86 items were generated, and after an expert validation and phase content validity and refinement, 80 items were finalized for item analysis. And the scale followed a 5-point Likert scale format, including 57 positive statements and 23 negative statements to minimize response bias. Next, each dimension was operationally defined to ensure that conceptual clarity and accurate measurement was considered, and based on these operational definitions, items were systematically generated to capture the psychosocial experiences of elderly individuals and forming the foundation for subsequent psychometric validation. So I will briefly explain one by one. Psychological resilience is the ability to cope up effectively with the stress and adapt to the life transition and maintain a balance despite age transition related challenges. Cognitive functioning represents the mental ability required for daily decision making and including like memory, reasoning, problem solving in day to day life. And emotional wellness refers to the capacity to understand and regulate and to express emotions in a healthy manner. Next, financial autonomy. It represents an elderly person's perceived independence in managing financial needs, and cultural engagement is an active participation in a cultural traditions and rituals and community participations and practices. And spiritual wellness refers to a sense of purpose and inner peace and connection to something that larger than oneself and which is selfless. Next, physical wellness. It represents a perceived health status and lifestyle practices and the ability to perform daily activities independently. Subjective well-being reflects how an individual evaluate their own lives, including life satisfaction, happiness, and overall contentment. So, interpersonal relationships refers to the quality of social connections with family, friends, and other community members. So together, all these 9 dimensions for assess or measure psychosocial well-being as a holistic and multidimensional construct rather than a single state of a elderly person. Coming to the item analysis, for item analysis, the preliminary scale was employed on 100 elderly respondents. Item randomization was done to eliminate order effects and fatigue bias to break the testing awareness. The item discrimination and item difficulty indices were calculated, and top 27% and bottom 27% of scores were compared to determine how effectively each item is differentiated between high scorers and low scorers. So after analysis, 26 items were rejected and 8 items were revised and 52 items were retained. So finally, making it a 60 item were selected for the standardization. The final 60 items scale was administered on a larger scale sample of 466 elderly individuals aged 60 years and above. So the data collected was systematically coded, tabulated, and compiled for subsequent subjected to appropriate statistical analysis to establish the reliability, validity, and normative properties of the scale. An exploratory analysis using principal axis factoring with the direct oblique mean rotation was applied to examine the internal structure. Here we can see that in table 2, Kaiser-Meyer Olkin value was 0.82, indicating sampling adequacy, and Bartlett test of sparsity was statistically significant at 1%. So these results confirm that the data were suitable for factor analysis. Coming to the factor extraction, exploratory factor analysis was conducted using principal axis factoring, as it focuses on sharing variances and is suitable for psychological constructs. Since psychosocial dimensions are theoretically related, direct oblique mean or oblique rotation was applied. Items with a factor loading greater than 0.40 were retained, and the analysis confirmed that the theoretical 9 dimensional model was empirically supported. The same table is represented in the scree plot. Here in scree plot, the support the factor retention decision. In this plot, eigenvalues plotted against the factor numbers. Here we can clearly see that a break or elbow was observed after the 9th factor, beyond which the eigenvalue showed a gradual and flattened decline. This indicates that factor beyond this point contribute minimal additional variances. Hence, the 9 factors were retained, and which also aligned with the theoretical framework of the psychosocial well-being. Table 4 represents the correlation matrix of 9 dimensions. Here, the correlation matrix, we can clearly see that most of the dimensions are significant, and the correlation matrix shows a significant interrelationship among dimensions while still maintaining a conceptual distinctiveness. So this supports that the multidimensional yet interconnected nature of the psychosocial well-being scale. Coming to the mean and standard deviation of the scale, this table represents a descriptive statistics of the psychosocial well-being scale. So the mean score here, 199.57, indicates that well-being indicates that elderly showed a moderate to good level of psychosocial well-being, and a standard deviation of 31.598 shows that some elderly scored higher and some lower than the average. So, but the differences were within the expected range. In simple words, we can say that mean and standard deviation provides a statistical basis for a clarifying elderly individuals into different levels of psychosocial well-being as high, low, and average for comparing groups in further analysis. Coming to the reliability, the scale demonstrated strong reliability. So the total Cronbach alpha was found to be 0.89, and here in split half, the reliability was found to be 0.831. Further, after 2 more weeks, uh, to test the stability of the scale, the same scale was administered on the 150 sample from the previous 466 sample. So they were again assessed after 2 weeks, where we found that the stability of the dimension was 0.82 coefficient. So we can clearly say that all 9 dimensions showed acceptable to excellent reliability, indicating a strong internal consistency and stability. Coming to the standardized scale. So finally, a standardized scale consisted of 60 items with 45 positive items and 15 negative statements. And this table are presented in this. While scoring procedure, the finals for positive and negative statements were scored as 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for positive, and reverse coding was done for the negative statements as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So dimension wise and total scores were computed to classify as psychosocial well-being. That is, the scores between yes, 60 to 139 as low, and 142 to 219 as average, and 220 to 300 as high. So this allows a practitioner to quickly categorize psychosocial well-being of elderly as high, low, medium, so that for research purpose and clinical purpose, it can be classified. This is the consumable manual that is going to be published and released in a university technical meeting that is going to be held in March. So the copyright will be retained with the university, and this is the consumable booklet for psychosocial well-being scale in an English version. Moving to the second objective, that is to demonstrate the application of this scale at a community level to assess the well-being among elderly. A multi-stage sampling was adopted. The study included this is the main part of the study in my PhD work. So excluding the 466 samples that we conducted on for standardization, this is a separate set of samples. So 240 sample respondents were selected, were employed in the study, where the state and the local of the study were purposely selected, as I was studying in the same state. So 120 through quota sampling, 120 baby boomers and 120 silent generation individuals were assessed for psychosocial well-being, and it is presented in this flowchart here. So the table 12 indicates that a generational differences, yes, a gender differences observed in the study. These results might be influenced by traditional social roles or expectations, where we can clearly see that male respondents showed higher financial autonomy and cognitive functioning. Maybe the reason could be that due to their greater workforce exposure and decision making in day-to-day life over a lifetime, they might have scored high in financial autonomy and cognitive functioning, whereas female have scored they have demonstrated female have demonstrated that higher emotional and spiritual wellness, which may be due to a stronger relationship networks with society, and more of caregiving roles and engagement in religious activities. So, however, these findings can be interpreted that within a social cultural context rather than inherent characters. Coming to the last uh, table, the generational differences, we can clearly observe that baby boomers have demonstrated higher cognitive functioning and cultural engagement and subjective well-being. But we can say that the reason could be that as baby boomers grew up during post-independence and revolution, they have witnessed few revolutionaries, and they are exposed to internet and other networks, social media. So in later years, so which might have influenced their cognitive functioning and cultural engagement. Whereas in contrast, in silent generation participants showed a stronger emotional and spiritual wellness because uh, we can uh, we can say that a silent generational experienced earlier socioeconomic constraints and traditional value system because they grew up in a post World War era. So that might have forced them stronger emotional regulations to give more value to the emotions and spiritual practices than other dimensions. We can say here. So to the implications could be that the scale provides a culturally relevant and standardized assessment tool. So it also helps in identifying the psychosocial vulnerable or mental illness at early stages. So it supports intervention planning, and it is evidence based foundation for it can be adopted in policy designing. So it fulfills a gap in gerontological assessment within the Indian context. So, to conclude this study, I would like to say that the psychosocial well-being scale for elderly has proven to be valid and reliable and culturally responsive, and it measures holistic dimensions, as I mentioned earlier, as the nine dimensions of aging, and highlights meaningful generational and gender differences, as we observed in my study. And this tool has strong implication for research and practice and policy, and aim to promote active and dignified aging. Thank you for the attention, and thank you for the opportunity given to me.